Hello and welcome to Fit Life Radio, the place where you can learn a little bit more about how your body works and find new ways to improve your health. I'm your host Petio, and I hope to provide you with as much valuable information and inspire you to become a better version of yourself. Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Fit Life Radio. Today, I feel like talking about something a little bit different than food and exercises and spirituality or whatever, even though I haven't really talked much about spirituality. But today I kind of want to talk about something that bothers quite a lot of people these days. It's an issue. It's a very ongoing issue. It's something that I see very often, not only in the gym but like pretty much everywhere all the time, and that's lower cross syndrome. Now, for those of you who don't know what is lower cross syndrome, it's basically the Donald Duck posture, or like this forward or anterior tilted pelvis, which contributes to a lot of back pain, and it can even contribute to quite a lot of other issues. Like it can also contribute to certain disc diseases and disc herniation, disc bulges, and hip pain, and a lot of problems which are not ideal to have in our daily lifestyle, because it's just not nice to live with the pain after all. So today I'm gonna talk about this. I'm gonna give you some insights, and I'm gonna share the way I see it. I'm gonna share some tips how to fix it. I'm gonna give you more insight of like what actually it is. I'm gonna try to explain you the best way possible, kind of how it occurs and which muscles are tight, which muscles are weak, and I'm also going to give you a very interesting tip, bonus tip. I'm gonna leave it at the end, just because that it's not because it's not important. It's probably actually one of the most important ones, but I'm gonna leave it at the end because I think in order to understand it, we need to have a little bit more knowledge about what it is, lower cross syndrome, and actually like how to fix it, and how to actually start first acknowledging, and then begin thinking about getting rid of it and getting rid of that pain. But now, how it occurs actually, like why lower cross syndrome, why how it happens. Now, it happens due to our lifestyle, believe it or not. It happens because in the modern lifestyle we tend to sit quite a lot, quite often. We sit at work, we sit at home and watch TV, we even commute and we sit in our car. So, as you know, the longer we stay in a certain position, the brain has this incredible ability to adapt and get efficient. So, the longer we stay in certain position, the brain is gonna pretty much um, turn off muscles which are not used or not activated. Uh, but that's gonna pretty much like cause some more tightness in other muscles, which is going to end up in an imbalance and imbalanced posture. Now, why is it very important to address it? Well, it's not only because we feel pain during, like, let's say, exercises, or like during like our daily activities. It's also because, as we know, our body is it's a very complex system. Everything works in unison, like muscles, ligaments, joints, everything has to work, especially muscles. When it comes to like biomechanics, muscles has to work appropriately in order to maintain this proper posture, or this healthy posture. We evolved to stay upright. We evolved to walk on only 2 feet. So we evolve pretty much being able to fire those muscles properly. And um, if we develop some sort of imbalance in some area of our body, those imbalances are going to contribute to other problems like up or down in the kinetic chain. And what do I mean by that? Now, essentially, you know what it is, lower cross syndrome. It's a forward tilted pelvis, right? But that forward tilted pelvis happened because we are sitting quite often. And this, it's going to contribute to, or not contribute, but is going to pretty much is going to create imbalances in our body, because it's going to force some other muscles to fire more than other in order to maintain this position that we're asking the body to stay in. Like, for example, there's something called upper cross syndrome, which we're going to address in another episode. Super important, of course. But lower cross syndrome often relates, or often contributes to upper cross syndrome, and that upper cross syndrome is just like that forward head posture, the forward shoulders posture, which happens again by sitting all the time. And eventually what happens is that our chest, our muscles in front get super tight, and the muscles on the back get super weak, because we don't use them that much, because we use ourselves, like we support ourselves by leaning forward and like on top of our hands when we sit. So that ends up like a chain reaction from one imbalance to another imbalance. And I think it's quite important to address it, and if we don't have it, to like learn to prevent it, because as I said, um, if we don't have it, we're very likely to get it, or to start having it later on in our life, because the more like it's something interesting actually. Once I thought that the more we progress in our career, unless we are like a professional athlete, we usually tend to sit more. We tend to sit more behind desks or behind computers, or we are driving. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. Like, we can't drive a bus standing up, like, obviously. But it just, the thing is that if we don't address those issues, issues become more present nowadays, because just like our lifestyle requires us to be this way. Now, it's a funny concept, but if you think like people 200 years ago, if you go kind of like back in time and tell to someone 200 years ago that we now have to pay to go and lift heavy stuff, they were gonna laugh at they're gonna laugh at us, right? Because um, you know about 200 years ago, like, there were so many more people that were physically active. There were so many people that were just doing heavy physical labor, and like, they didn't, like, maybe they have more issues or other type of issues, but they were for sure suffering less from those type of imbalances, because those imbalances, they occur mostly due to sitting. And if you end up not sitting that much, it's hard to get that imbalance, right? So moving forward, let's see actually what it is, a lower cross syndrome. Like, it's a cross syndrome because basically there is like a cross pattern with muscles which are tight or firing more than others, and they are creating the imbalance. Now, if you think of your pelvis and the position of your pelvis, now the easiest way to actually explain you this is maybe like, think of the band of your pants or your underwear, or just like a belt. When you wear jeans, you have a belt. Think of the position of that. If that's horizontal, your pelvis is pretty much horizontal. If the belt is kind of like tilted forward and you see that it's not horizontal, like, you have pretty much this lower cross syndrome, or this like forward tilted pelvis, right? So in order to keep that pelvis in a neutral position, there are so many muscles that are attached, and they're firing in unison to control that. Now, if you look at the body from the side and you put like a cross or an X right at the hip area or the pelvis area, like, you will see that in each end there are muscles, essentially four groups of muscles that are that's supposed to cooperate and work in unison in order to keep the pelvis in the proper position. So those muscles are the abdominals. On the other end of that line or that cross is the glutes. Then you have the erector spinae muscles, which are like muscles on your back or on your lower back mostly. And then on the other end of that cross is the hip flexors on the front side of your body. So you have two groups of muscles on the front side of your body and two groups of muscles on the back side of your body, which are supposed to fire in unison, like I said, to keep the pelvis in the proper position. Just like if you try to maintain a balance of something by adjusting the tension from 4 different directions. Let's say, like, think of it as imagine like a scale, right? But those old school scales, which are not electrical, but the ones that you put the thing that you want to weigh on one side and you put like the weights on the other side, and like when it gets equal or horizontal, then you know the weight, right? So think of the pelvis as this lever basically, but now from you have 4 different muscles in 4 of the like directions, moving it up and down, moving each side of that lever up and down. And if some of those muscles are not firing correctly, that basically weight is not going to be distributed properly and is going to end up in a balance. Now, I'm going to address each of those muscles individually, and I'm trying to give you a little bit more insight. Now, first, let's start talking about the erector spinae. Erector spinae, this is basically a group of 3 muscles, which they're kind of like more or less run kind of like the length of your spine. So they attach to your pelvis, on the back side of your pelvis, on your lower back, and they run along the spine up, and they attach to the ribs or the rib cage. Those muscles, when they contract, they are creating this low back arch. So they're essentially like, when muscle contract, that muscles brings the 2 points of attachment together. So in this case, when that muscle contracts or gets tight, it brings the rib cage towards the pelvis, or mostly the pelvis towards the rib cage, which means that the back side of your pelvis has to go up towards your ribs, and you end up in anterior pelvic tilt, basically. The second group of muscles which end up being tight are the hip flexors. Now, think of the hip flexors as muscles which are involved into bending your legs at the hips, right? So you know what is L-sit, or that 90 degrees that a lot of gymnasts or calisthenic athletes do when they will like bend their legs at the hip but maintaining them straight, like that. The hip flexors are the muscles that are very, very, very highly activated in those moves. Now, think of it also when you sit. So when you sit, you're also in this 90 degree between your femur and your pelvis, right? So those muscles are very, very tight or tensed, or very like kind of, even if they're not activated, they are kind of constantly in this contracted position, because we sit for like 8+ hours a day, and the body kind of learns to keep them tight. More on that a little bit later, but let me finish with the hip flexors. So hip flexors are those muscles which, as I said, are bending the legs at the hips. Now, there is one in particular that contributes quite a lot to low back pain and to that excessive low back arch, and this is the psoas major. That psoas major attaches to all the vertebrae in your lower back, which are 4, just saying, plus one of the thoracic. So if you really want to know a little bit more, it's like T12, L1, L2, L3, and L4. So like all the vertebrae pretty much on your lower back. That muscle runs through your pelvis and it goes down and attaches to your femur. So when that muscle is active, it brings not active, but like when that muscle is activated or tensed, it kind of brings the femur up towards the pelvis, and it brings the lower back towards the femur as well. But that happens kind of like inside, which pulls your spine more into that excessive arch that we really don't need and don't want. Now, tight muscles, they don't necessarily mean that they're strong muscles, right? So I kind of want to take a little bit of time and talk about how muscles actually become tight. Now, when you think of a muscle that it's tight or that it's not lengthened enough, that doesn't mean that the muscle pretty much shortens. It doesn't mean that the muscle, like if I have more range of motion than you, it doesn't mean that my muscles are longer than you. Tightness happens when we spend most of our time in this shortened position. So the brain pretty much limits the range of motion or the amount of length that can occur in a certain muscle, because the longer we stay in that position, the more comfortable we get and the stronger we get in that position. But like we get weaker in the other position. So the brain kind of like it's for our safety pretty much, or for muscles and joint safety, the brain is gonna limit the range of motion from that muscle, because if we don't use it often, why would we go there? Why would we be able to stretch that further if we don't really need to ever go there? Just like it's like, think of it as a speed limit kind of in the car. Like when you set the speed limit to 50 miles an hour, the car can't go further than 50 miles an hour. Well, the pain response that you experience when you try to stretch a certain muscle, it's that limit. It doesn't mean that your muscle cannot lengthen or stretch. It means that the brain limits like the amount of stretch that can happen in the muscle. So when we try to stretch the muscle, we're we're technically trying to teach our brain or trying to move that limit a little bit further or a little bit higher. So we're trying to teach our brain and our nervous system that no, it's alright. Like it's alright to lengthen a little bit more. It's alright to relax a little bit more and being able to reach these new positions. So it takes time, but we have to go through this type of like pain response to get to get more range of motion. So those muscles become tight again because we tend to sit quite a lot, and when we sit, we put ourselves in those positions. Like when we sit, as I said, our hip flexors or our psoas majors, they're constantly tensed because we have to sit in this 90-degree position. We can't sit otherwise, right? But then as we sit, we would go forward because the gravity is gonna pull us forward, or just because like we are leaning to over a laptop or something, and we kind of like our upper body goes forward, our shoulders go forward. Now, because the body or the brain, likes to look at the horizon, or we evolved to be able to look at the horizon and not look down or up, because the threat is most likely to come from like from in front of us or even behind, but from the horizon, not from above or down. The body is constantly going to try to maintain and do whatever it takes to maintain our look to go and to look forward or to look towards the horizon. So when we sit and we tend to run forward, the brain is gonna activate those muscles in the lower back, which is going to extend us and is going to lift our chest and allow us to go to look forward. It's a natural response that we can't really change, but this is why those muscles tend to get very tight. Now, when some muscles get very tight, some others get weak, or actually the opposite. When we sit and we don't use certain muscles, other ones get tight in order to compensate for the problem. Now, like I said, brain kind of like our brain kind of wants to make sure that we are constantly in some sort of durable position, or some sort of position where we need to you know, kind of like resist the gravity or whatever, or we stand upright. But if we have imbalances, our brain is gonna have to force it, like other muscles, to fire more, in order to maintain this type of, you know, posture that we need to like, you know, being upright. So um, those muscles get tight because the brain activates them more, but the brain activates them more because other muscles get inactive. Like the first muscle that, or muscles or muscle group that gets inactive when we sit is the abdominals. Now, abdominals are a group of muscles. Like think about your core, about your six pack. Like these are muscles on the front side of your body. Those muscles connect from the front portion of your pelvis to the rib cage, right? So when they contract, they would bring the they would bring the rib cage forward towards the pelvis, and that's going to create less arch in your lower back, right? Or it's going to basically maintain the position of your pelvis to be neutral. So when those muscles get inactive, there's nothing to pull your pelvis up from the front, and there's a lot more muscles that are pulling the pelvis from the backside of your body. So voila, we have imbalance. Now, another muscle that get inactive, believe it or not, is the glutes. They get inactive or weak just because when we sit, there's no need for them to be active. Like those, um, glutes are, like we talked about hip flexors. Glutes are doing the opposite of the hip flexors. They are hip extensors. Um, Glutes are located, we all know where glutes are located, but basically they attach from the back side of the pelvis to the femur, but on the back of your body. So they are controlling this kind of like posterior or backward um, pelvic tilt. So you see what I'm trying to kind of like, when I'm trying to picture this, is like those four groups of muscles are located, and they're kind of like opposing each other. But as they're opposing each other, they're stabilizing the pelvis, which is uh, like supposed to be in the neutral place, right? So if the glutes are inactive, the hip flexors are more active, and they're pulling the pelvis more from the front side of the body, which creates this other imbalance, which is like from the upper front side of your body, where the abdominals are, they get inactive, and other muscles on the back side, the back upper side of the body or the pelvis, gets more active, and they pull the pelvis down. Now, it's way easier to look at a picture of like a pelvis, look at the picture of like the muscles that I'm talking about, and kind of like get more understanding. I'm trying to present it as detailed as possible and to give some more analogies, but like for someone, for some people it's just easier to look at, to see it visually and to understand it better. So I wrote a blog about this. It's called How to Fix Lower Cross Syndrome. You can find it in my website in the blog section. There I pretty much I described all those muscles and how they work and how they get inactive and how they get super tense, and I put pictures there so you can see what I'm trying to say now, and you can see how those muscles are supposed to work in unison in order to control the position of the pelvis. I probably said that like 3,000 times already, but this is the lower cross syndrome. This is that bad posture that occurs, and it occurs because like those muscles are just not whenever we sit there, they're learning to not work together. So when we stand up, they're already taught that they're not supposed to work, and some are supposed to work like harder. So we end up being imbalanced. Now, as I said, I'm gonna give you 3 tips how to get more aware if you have lower cross syndrome, or how to prevent yourself from having a lower cross syndrome. Now, also in that blog, I've listed some exercises. I put some pictures, and I also describe those exercises, and I'm giving cues, and I also give like progressions there. So if you're interested, you can start kind of incorporating those exercises throughout your day. But if not, it's totally fine. Like my goal is to pretty much make you more aware of this issue that you may or may not have, but may potentially start having in the future. So even though you don't necessarily address it now, at least you might be aware of that potential issue. So let's get started with the tips now. The first tip that I like to give people, and even for myself, is like, try to vary between sitting and standing, and also try to get more aware. Maybe like try to stand and look at yourself in the mirror. Now, that is going to help you not only to get a little bit more active during the day and get out of that position of sitting, but also it can help you get more aware. Now, when you stand kind of tall in front of the mirror and you try to move your pelvis forward and backward, you will get more aware of how it feels to be in that position. So like if you see that your pelvis is very, very forward, and you try to look yourself in the mirror and try to reverse that, you will feel those muscles contracting. You will feel other muscles like not releasing enough tension, and you will learn pretty much how you should feel, or how you will feel in this position or this situation. So whenever you get to stand up more, you will be more aware of those muscles being active or not active, and you will like eventually, the more you practice this, the more you will end up like trying to activate those muscles which you know they're not active. Like whenever you stand up, for example, try to squeeze your glutes and try to bring your pelvis down, from the backside, or try to activate your core and try to bring your belly button in. So this way you will activate, and you will kind of like force those muscles to be more active, and it's gonna happen slow. It's gonna take a lot of time, but it's not impossible, and it's a pretty good way to actually get aware of the position of your pelvis, and kind of like start to incorporate more of those frequent, pretty much correctional moves, which are not heavy exercises. It's just simply trying to go to the proper position yourself, and trying to feel how that feels, and what it is essentially. Now, they're like standing desks. They're like you can just put like a couple of boxes more on your desk, and kind of like train or like increase the demand for you to be upright. Now, I do know and I do understand it's super hard to if you're a bus driver, for example, you cannot be standing up all the time. So I get it, but with this kind of with this exercise, at least when you get to be standing up, you will be more aware, and you will try, and you will kind of like use the time to correct as much as possible. So yeah, try it out, and you will see. Now, the second tip that I like to give people is to create some sort of activity routines. It can be just like 10 minutes every hour, or 5 minutes every hour, or like when you go to the toilet, for example, to try to go to the furthest toilet possible, just to be a little bit more active, or like try to be involved in some sort of sport, like not a heavy lifting sport, because of course if you have this issue and you go lifting without knowing how to correct that, or to go to the correct position, you will end up hurting yourself. But maybe like try to find a sport that involves your whole body. Like for instance, um, as I mentioned in some other podcasts, um, I recently started to go to bouldering or indoor climbing, right? And um, I like to think of myself that I'm pretty aware of my muscles, because like I've been kind of exercising for quite a while now, and I'm pretty connected to my body, so I can pretty much activate like every single muscle of my body just by thinking of it. But um, like I noticed that like the day after, because like when you try to climb certain routes, you don't notice the activation of the muscles. Like you can't notice all the time which muscles are active, because like pretty much your whole body is active. Like you don't really isolate certain muscle when you're trying to climb. Everything is active in order to complete this. And I noticed that the next day I have some soreness like on my obliques, on the like the sides of my core. So it was pretty interesting to see how actually something like this made me activate my core, and I was not even aware of that. So some sports, or some movements or some activity might benefit you by just simply forcing you to activate your core without you knowing. But this way you're gonna kind of like mm, get connected to that muscle again and learn to connect it again. Now of course there are exercises that I even like, in the blog I listed certain exercises specifically for activating your core, if you want to kind of like progress faster and really like take it seriously. But if you don't, just try to find some sort of activity that is incorporating your full body, and this way, like regardless whether you want it or not, your brain is gonna be required to activate certain muscles which are not active, and you will learn and you will connect faster. It's just like, um, have you seen like those videos of like the people with big chests, like the men's typical macho men's that are like kind of like bouncing their chest, like they're uh, being able to like activate their chest and to bounce their chest by just like thinking about that. Like, um, this is because those people, especially like people going to the gym, they are so well connected to their muscles, so they can activate their muscles just by thinking about it without having to go in the proper position. And this frequent activity is going to first of course break the pattern and break the routine and make you more active, make you more to stand up, and kind of like prevent you from sitting up too much, but also is going to help you connect more to the muscles that are not active, and hopefully eventually to help you reduce that lower back pain, or help you fight with lower cross syndrome. Now the third is to frequently stretch. um, it's not easy, like I said, it's quite painful sometimes to try stretch the muscles, but it's not something that you should be doing all the time. You shouldn't be like a crazy painful exercise. It shouldn't be like kind of sweating when you're stretching, right? You should be um, more frequently trying to go further to positions which you are not very familiar with, in order to train your brain to kind of like move that limit that we talked about a bit further. So I give you a stretch in the blog with pictures, of course, and description. This is a hip flexor stretch. Um, it's quite nice because it can be pretty much done everywhere. Like it doesn't require equipment, it doesn't require anything. It just requires you to uh, stand up, go down, and do a couple of stretches. Now, of course, I'm not saying you can do it everywhere, because you're not gonna be doing it while you're driving. You're not gonna be doing it like at work or something. But you can incorporate it and like in different times of your day. Like for instance, you can do it in the morning when you wake up. You can do it for like 5 minutes before you go to bed. You can do it while you're watching TV, right? While you're watching TV, you're pretty much sitting. Like now, when you're, uh, when you watch TV, why not go down and try to stretch those muscles? It's not gonna hurt. I mean, maybe a little bit, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna prevent you from watching a TV. You're still gonna do whatever you like to, but now you're just not gonna be constantly sitting. You're gonna actually create a little bit of a stretch. And that stretch is going to help with the activation of other muscles. That stretch is going to help the position of your pelvis to be corrected more, like, faster. And like I said, and like I mentioned, if you want to learn more about how to do the hip stretch or the hip flexor stretch, check out that blog. It's pretty nice, to be honest. It's pretty cool. And like I said, if you want to learn a little bit more about those exercises or progressions, feel free to go. It's absolutely free, and I think it's probably one of the best blogs that I've written, just because it's more like a guide rather than my own thoughts. And uh, it's every time I have a hard time activating my core, every time I have hard time, like, going to proper positions, I do incorporate those moves in my routines. I do them every day. uh, I do them often, and I'm just trying to keep my pelvis and my body healthy. So if you're interested, definitely go check them out. They're fun exercises. They're easy exercises. They're not heavy, intense exercises. They just require your attention and your focus. But you know, finally, posture. It's nothing else but like focus and being aware of the position of your body, right? So again, if you're interested, definitely check it out. And now that brings me to the last um, bonus tip that I want to share with you. Um, and that is food. I know I said I'm not going to talk about food, but believe it or not, food can actually um, really contribute to low back pain. And I know it's crazy, but hear me out. Now, I'm going to start from there. Muscles and organs, they share the same neurological pathways, right? So in other words, the signal that travels from the brain towards an organ, it goes to the muscle as well. So which muscle is close to the gut or the stomach? The abdominals. Now every time we eat something that our gut doesn't like it or can't tolerate it, we end up um, kind of um, with an inflammation or with like gut issues. Usually that's like bloating or some sort of like, you know disturbance in the gut. And um, when the gut is inflamed, when there is an issue with that organ, the brain is going to automatically shut the muscles around it, and it's just gonna channel or focus its resources to fixing the issue in that organ. That's a pretty interesting um, phenomena, kind of. But it does make sense, because if you think about it, like, we can live without a leg, but we can't really live without a kidney. uh, it's same. We can live without activating, or we can get away without activating our abdominals very often. But if our gut is not healthy, we won't be able to digest food, and we won't be able to therefore live. So it's an organ that is more important than the muscle. um, Now, uh, if our gut is inflamed, like I said, maybe, let's say, because we don't tolerate gluten or dairy, or there's some certain foods that are not, uh, you know, liked by our gut, the brain is gonna notice that, and is going to shut off uh, the activation or the signals that are going towards the the muscle, or in this case, towards the abdominal. And we already discussed what happens when the abdominals are not active. Like, other muscles get more active, and that like cause imbalance. Um, it's what I'm sharing that with you because I do want to get you more aware of that, uh, because a lot of people are not even aware that they might have gut issues. A lot of people find it normal to have to be bloated or to have they don't even notice that they have gut inflammations. And actually, when you start frequently activating your core, you end up noticing when your gut is inflamed more often or easier. And what I mean by that, so for example, like you know that I do like to train and I do like to go to the gym and go to bouldering, and especially in the gym. In the gym, usually you tend to kind of activate certain muscles, or you learn how to activate certain muscles. Now, when I notice that I can't activate my core the same way that I'm used to, I'm pretty sure that something happened with with my gut. I'm pretty sure that I ate something that disturbed me, and lo and behold, the day after, I notice other signs of my gut not being not being very well. Like I note bloating. I'm noticing that like my stool is different, for example, which is um, it's something that a lot of time we take for granted, but these are indications that something is wrong. And like it's crazy, but it is true that actually, like, foods that we don't tolerate or that our gut doesn't like, uh, they're they can cause low back pain. They can not only cause like discomfort, but also like they can um, prevent us from healing our lower back pain, or they can cause that lower back pain or that lower cross syndrome. So I left it at the end. In fact, it's probably, like I said, one of the most important things, because the first thing is to learn how to activate our muscles and to be aware of those muscles. And if we don't know how to do that, because there's something else that is preventing it, we're gonna have a really hard time correcting what we suffer from. But I left it at the end because I kind of wanted to go first through the muscles which are active and are not active, and I wanted to um, kind of set pretty much this for. I wanted to make it easier to be understood. Like because if you know how certain muscles work and you know which muscles are not activated during that. Um, when we have that forward pelvic tilt, it would be easier to kind of connect why food can cause it, right? So look, guys, if you like the information I provide you, um, I highly suggest you go and check out my website. um, Not because it's the greatest website ever, but because I do my best to post frequently, like blogs, and I do my best to come up with free guides, and there are a lot of free guides that actually might be interesting for you. Like for example, the uh, free healthy eating guide can help you quite a lot to eliminate some of the foods that might be issue for you. Or there is like awareness journal that can also help you get more aware of how your body feels, and it can help you to notice which foods are good or which foods are preferred from your body. So if you're interested, go check it out. I also wrote a book. It's called The Blueprint of Health. It's available in Amazon. It's a Kindle version. It's an ebook. If you're interested, it consists of 21 different aspects which they're worth addressing. And it's more of a guide. It's not exactly as a book. It's a small book, but I think it has a big value because it can serve more as a guide to kind of mm, or like a checklist where you can, if you really try to improve your quality of life and get healthier, you can go through each section and you can be like, okay, checked. This one I address it. This one I address it. Oh, water. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. Let me try to drink more water for the next 1 week and see how it's gonna be. By the way, this is why water is important. So you will have that information in the book. Also, last but not least, you have the ability to hire me as your online coach. Now, everything that I talk here on the podcast and much more you can learn from me when you hire me as an online coach. Like the goal, if we work together, would be to get more aware, to learn more about food and nutrition, and to learn also more about movement. Like our goal is not gonna be to go and hammer ourselves in the gym. I'm not gonna give you meal plans or diet plans and a certain amount of food that you should eat. I'm not gonna also give you like workout plans without spending a few sessions and kind of like assessing how you move, because you might be able to move properly, but you might suffer from lower cross syndrome. So our goal would be to correct this posture issue and then to kind of like, let's say, squat or whatever. But oftentimes problems in the posture actually can decrease our ability to go to positions such as squat, for example. So uh, like if you're interested, go check it out. It's called online coaching. um, if you're not sure yet, you can just drop me an email or a message, and we can schedule a free call, and we can talk about everything and anything. We can talk about what's your goals and if you have any issues, and uh, maybe we can come up with solutions for you, or maybe we can find a way to um, you know to help you somehow. So anyway, this is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned from this 50 minutes lecture, and I hope to see you next time. Bye. Thank you for tuning to Fit Life Radio. I hope you learned something useful, or at least had a bit of color to your commute. If you enjoyed the show, please share the love by introducing it to friends and family. And if you don't mind, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. Thank you for your support, and until next time, stay fit.